They say this day is bad luck, but for me, it's one of the days I have circled on my calendar because I absolutely love this franchise. Today, I am talking about my favorite Friday the 13th movies. Let's go. Now, with it being Friday the 13th, of course, I'm going to give you my top 5 favorite Friday the 13th movies. And honestly, I'm super excited because I don't think I've gotten a chance to really spread my wings with talking about this franchise and talking about some of my favorites. I feel like the Friday the 13th franchise is so iconic and people have so many takes on which ones are favorites and which ones are the best. And, I just decided I'm going to give you 5 of my favorite. If you are a big fan of Friday the 13th, I love to see your rating down in the comments below, so don't forget to drop that. Also, if you're new to the channel, hit that subscribe button. Go ahead and join Figure Out Films' community. I see us growing. I'd love to see us climb up to 1,000. Hopefully by the end of this year, that might be a little bit of a stretch, but please, that is the goal. We are trying to get to 1,000. I see us climbing. I love the support and the engagement, so, keep on rocking. I appreciate that. And if you like more videos like this, where we do talk about other franchise, iconic horror characters and movies, we've talked about Child's Play, we've talked about Nightmare on Elm Street and other franchises, so don't forget to check some of those older videos before. But for those who don't know, the Friday the 13th franchise, it's Jason in the hockey mask, but it's not all that. This franchise goes through so many different directions. It's actually very enjoyable. From some of the most iconic, maybe the Mount Rushmore of horror icons or mass slashers, I would say Friday the 13th has so much variety, and it's still good. It's not just a slasher hockey mask murderer going around and killing teenagers that get around a campfire. There's so much more subgenre and engagement there. That's why, as I've gotten older, the more I watch Friday the 13th, it's slowly becoming maybe my favorite franchise. For a long time, it's been Nightmare on Elm Street, and then Halloween, and then Jason as an afterthought. But now, I think I'm a Jason boy. I'm not going to lie. I think in my heart, I'm always going to be Freddy, but man, Jason is getting up there, which is ironic because they ended up fighting each other. And as a kid, I thought that was one of the coolest things ever. Alien versus Predator and Freddy versus Jason. For me, it was like all my favorite worlds collided into one. I never got a Terminator versus RoboCop though. But with Friday the 13th, it's just an iconic thing, all the jokes. But when we talk about the slasher genre, you can watch any of them and you'll be fine. That's why I also love the franchise. Yes, there is a story that's connecting them all, but at some point you just kind of put that in the back burner and just enjoy what's on screen, which is Jason doing what Jason does, is protecting his Camp Crystal Lake. But, enough of that. Let me go ahead and give you my top 5 favorite Friday the 13th films. So for this list, I'm actually going to go from my least favorite of my favorites at number 5 all the way to my most favorite at number 1. So it's not going to be like, here's 5 recommendations, but let's just go into it. So starting out at 5, this is one that I finally saw with my buddy Daniel from the Cobwebs, and I just fell in love with it. It was like love at first sight almost. It's just like when I watched it, I knew. That is Jason Goes to Hell, the final Friday, which actually wasn't the final Friday because then we got a reboot. But why I like this movie, it's so weird, and it was surrounded by so much like editing and lost footage and all that great stuff. And now with Scream Factory put out this amazing box set, which if you haven't purchased this box set, I highly recommend you do. It's absolutely essential. It's beautiful. It's just one of my favorite physical media things. So like when people say, is physical media dying? Look at this Friday the 13th box set. This is a miracle we got this all together. But back to Jason Goes to Hell. Why I love this movie so much is it's the story. It's so zany, it's so weird, it's crazy. So Jason finally dies and his soul is going to hell and it's trying to find a new host. And in that, we find out that Jason has a family obviously disconnected from him that he's trying to carry his legacy over to. So he's trying to find the host and take to hell with him. Now, in this movie, I think it's super sweet that the human element of this, it's about a mother who has a child or is pregnant, and that her partner has been put away because of the small town not liking him, and he's trying to get back to her. But then, of course, Jason's also on the loose, and he's also taking over people's body, almost like a possession of sorts. And it's trying to unravel that mystery. And when Jason does take over people's body, they kind of turn almost to like Reanimator in some ways, and like a possession. It's kind of crazy, and I really enjoy it. It's really refreshing in this franchise to see something of that sort, where you don't actually just see Jason by himself. He's taking over other people's bodies. You get a bounty hunter in here who, I forget the actor's name, but he was in X-Files as well as a Deep Throat character. So, I mean, that's great to see. The soundtrack's great, and you know what? Basically, the story is pretty crazy from what I've just said. It is basically what the story is all about, and Jason just trying to get back to his original home, which we, find out about in this movie that's existed now, in the last movie, right? But what I love about this is it's also just paying homage to other iconic horror movies. So in this movie, I get things like from Hellraiser, Friday the 13th, Halloween, so many other horror movie franchises. This movie pays homage to it in some ways. I think we also can get a Texas Chainsaw Massacre moment in this movie, which is great. So I feel like I'm seeing some of the greatest hits of some of my other favorite horror movies, and one of the heavy hitters is just, giving it a sigh of respect, which I think is really cool at the time. And then also the ending, which I'm going to spoil it here for you. It shows the intention of having Jason versus Freddy, which I think is amazing. I did not know that going into this last movie. Like I said, I saw it as a first-time movie a couple months ago, actually. Or maybe it was later than that, but I did not know the ending, and my jaw dropped. Even though this movie has long existed, and I've already seen Freddy vs. Jason plenty, I didn't know this movie had that kind of ending, and I think that was just so cool, and I had such a great reaction to it, and I'm like, yeah, this is great. So I highly recommend you watch Jason Goes to Hell and enjoy it. This is one of those easy watch background Friday the 13th movies, which I really like. You have some friends over, you watch a little bit of movies on the screen, you have a couple drinks, and you just hang out. This is that movie. Man, it's a great time. Coming in next is another, I would say controversial when it comes to this franchise, but I really can't escape my love for this movie. It's so damn enjoyable. It's a breath of fresh air, and I know some people don't like that, but that is Friday the 13th, Part 5. A New Beginning. A New Beginning. This is fresh after the final chapter, and then you get a new beginning right after. So, this franchise couldn't die to save its life, which I'm so thankful it did it. With this one, A New Beginning, you see Tommy Jarvis here, and honestly, he's all grown up, and he's put in this kind of this recovery camp of some kind with other people. It's almost like an AA group, and they're trying to recover from their traumas and things like that. And Tommy Jarvis is scarred because he's seeing and being haunted by images of Jason from the previous movie, The Final Chapter, and he keeps hallucinating and he keeps stressing out, and sometimes you can't tell if it's real or not, and there's actual killings going on in this small little community. Is it Jason or is it not? We don't know, and in this movie, it has a great little reveal. I know people kind of don't like the twist in this movie, but to me, it's still in the realm, and it's still in the respects of the Friday the 13th lore, and that's why I love it. And also, I just love the characters. This movie has some of the best characters. You get an actress whose name is actually Voorhees in real life in this movie as well. You get some gnarly scenes, especially the opening of this movie. It's actually insane. The kill scene in the opening of this movie. It's just almost jaw-dropping in the way to set the tone for the movie. This movie is all about being a slasher and getting away with as much gore and horror and violence that it can get to. And I'm here for it, baby. Like, I love this movie. And honestly, the third act isn't very strong, but to me, the ride was worth it, and I'm happy to just kind of ride off on the sunset, seeing what this movie shows at the end. And yeah, I don't think this movie gets enough love, and I'm here to defend. I'm one of the New Beginning defenders, okay? So, justice for Roy. Do like this movie. You need to see it again. I don't want to see some slander on this movie. I really do like this one. Coming in number 3, no shock here. It's gonna be Friday the 13th, Part 6. Jason Lives. This might be the most iconic Friday the 13th movie. I mean, it's the epitome of summer slashers. I mean, if you didn't see my last video, I mean, we've talked a little bit about this. So if you want to check that video out, check it out right here. But Friday the 13th, Part 6. So Jason lives. So Jason, right after a new beginning, Jason comes back to life through lightning strikes, and he decides he's got to defend his turf. Camp Crystal Lake again, of course, right? And there's teenagers there, and you know what? He decides, no bullshit, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to do the most creative kills and have some of my most iconic moments in a Part 6 of my franchise. All my love to Jason in this movie. I love the hockey mask representation. I think this is debatably one of his best hockey mask looks as well. He has a harpoon. He's got his machete. He's got this nice greenish khaki look. I'm just all about the look of Jason in this movie. A lot of nice daytime scenes too. So it feels like you're actually in the summer camp. It's not at night at the camp, Crystal Lake. I really like this movie. The characters are great. They're fun. They're not annoying. They're pretty entertaining as well. This is a great Friday the 13th movie, period. Like, objectively speaking, if you're going to have someone see a Friday the 13th movie, I would say this is one of your safest bets to recommend. This is just such a great time. Friday the 13th Part 6. What do you think about this? Is this maybe one of the best Friday the 13th movies? Let me know what your thoughts are on this one down in the comments below. All right, coming in number 2, I love my boy Tommy Jarvis, I'm not going to lie, so I had to throw in the final chapter, Friday the 13th, Part 4. This movie is great. Talk about some of the best characters this whole franchise has to offer. I mean, in this movie, you get Crispin Glover, you get Corey Feldman playing a young Tommy Jarvis who's just a horror nut, which you love to see in this movie. Crispin Glover plays the most Sigma of all Sigmas in this movie. If you haven't seen the dance sequence that he has in this movie, you need to go and check it out and step up your dance game. I just love the characters in this movie. Jason, is here in Camp Crystal Lake once again. This family, so the Jarvises live on Camp Crystal Lake basically, and Jason doesn't like that, So he's there out to defend his turf, and he sees young Tommy Jarvis, who's, like we said, a horror nut, and he sees some potential in him. And what he means by that is potential future trauma. And throughout this movie, Jason kind of has his eye out for Tommy Jarvis. Jarvis just cannot handle that, and he's there with his sister and these carefree teenagers in his house, and they just can't take anything serious until it's almost too late, when someone gets thrown out the window, basically. But also, most of this movie focuses on these teenagers and like the awkwardness and like who likes who and how to get along. It's kind of funny in the 80s with some of these teenager trope slasher movies. They're friends, but they don't seem like they like to be around each other, which I think is very funny. And I'm so old now, I can't even remember if that was actually a thing when I was in high school or not. But definitely a trend I've seen in a lot of 80s movies, especially some of these lower budget ones from the 80s. And I kind of like it. It makes for great conversation and enjoyment on screen. But in Friday the 13th, the final chapter, it's not the final chapter, but at the time, it felt like a closing, like a true closing to these first 4 movies, and I really enjoy it. I love the Jarvis storyline. I think it's really strong here and in 5 as well. They do a great complementary from 3 and 4, from 4 and 5, so I do appreciate that. Again, Jason looks awesome in this movie. And honestly, I just love this cover too. When we talk about iconic covers as well, I would say Final Chapter as well is up there with it. This has some of the most, graphic kills, I would say. Like I said, you see someone get thrown out the window. You get great slashing moments. You get a very jaw-dropping ending with the Jarvis family. Like I said, Crispin Glover's in this movie. You get characters you actually enjoy being with and supporting and rooting for and hoping that they actually survive. Of course, it's Friday the 13th. Probably doesn't happen. But if you have not checked this movie out, please do. This is also one of the most rewatchable Friday the 13th, I would say, regardless of it being the final chapter. And finally, at number 1, my favorite Friday the 13th movie. I love watching this movie so much. It's one of my favorite looks for Jason. That's Friday the 13th. Part 2. The body count continues. For me, Friday the 13th Part 2 feels almost like a remake. It's kind of like the Evil Dead 2 of the Evil Dead for Friday the 13th, where Evil Dead 2 is a sequel, but it kind of feels like a reimagining remake of the first movie. That's what I get from this. And honestly, I do prefer this one more than the first one. You don't have to really see the first one to get this as well, because you do get more Jason in this movie, and not only is it Jason, but it's a baghead Jason. Wearing a burlap sack with one eye out with a pitchfork and overalls. I'm all about it. He's got this kind of hillbilly look, and I just love it. You get more lore with him and his mom, Pamela Voorhees, in this movie. You don't get Kevin Bacon, but this movie, yes, it does do the crime of killing the survivor from the past movie in the beginning here. And you actually start this movie with a replay of the ending of the first movie. But this movie, I feel like, does everything that the first movie didn't do as well, and it does it so much better here. And also the kills, I think, are a lot more enjoyable. I think this was such a revolutionary movie when we talk about slashers, because of the story and how it went in the first movie, not to criticize it, because I think it does kind of stand the test of time a little bit. Part 2 just kind of carries the franchise on its back unintentionally with its release and inevitably what comes out after. I just really love this movie. I mean, Steve Miner directed this movie. I mean, talk about, a safe bet director to be in this. The iconic Baghead Jason is just so damn good. He's so elaborate with the kills. I love the reveal of the little ceremonial table with the mom's skull there. That just embedded in my brain is iconic for the Friday the 13th franchise. This feels very primitive. It feels like the franchise is still trying to find its roots and its legs, and it's taking a lot of heavy swings and taking some risks in this movie, and I really do enjoy that aspect. It's such an entertaining movie. It takes itself pretty serious for a slasher as well, which I do appreciate. This is just the best for me, and this is just my Friday the 13th movie. This is my favorite. I think it's the best as well. I highly recommend people do check this movie out. If they don't want just senseless violence and slasher tropes of the 80s, which I'm not complaining. I love those, but if you want something a little bit more grounded, I say this one is definitely the one to go to. What are your thoughts on Friday the 13th Part 2 versus Part 1? Yes, they can both, be accepted as your favorites for sure, but I always kind of feel like there's two different camps, and I kind of am in the middle. I do prefer 2 a little bit more than 1, but I'm not going to say that 1 is like terrible. It's a little boring though. Anyway, what are your thoughts of the Friday the 13th franchise? What is your top 5 favorite? What did you think of my list? Let me know down in the comments below. Like I said, that has been my top 5 Friday the 13th movies. Please hit that subscribe button, drop some comments down below. We'd love to see that engagement down there. Don't forget to check out some of our previous videos as well, as we try to get to that 1K subscriber mark. So love to see that improve. Thank you all for tuning in to another episode here at Figure Out Films. My name is Chris, and remember, if you are not watching Friday the 13th movies on Friday the 13th, do you really care about cinema? Other than that, I'll see you next time.